What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to another Kinesio Outdoors Gear Review video. In today's video, I'll be talking about the Athlon Midas TAC 6x24x50 first focal plane rifle scope. Now, before I dive into my review of this scope, I want to first mention the scopes that I've used in the past, just to give you an idea of what I've experienced. So I've used, a Pentax scope on my 243. I've used a Barska scope on my 22. My dad is a Leupold Mark III or something like that. I don't know. I've used Tasco scopes, and I've used the Vortex Diamondback 3.5x10x50 second focal plane scope. So I've used quite a large variety of scopes, most of them on the more inexpensive side, except for my dad's Leupold. That's a really, really nice scope. It's a 4x16x44, something like that. So when I was looking to get this scope, I had some ideas on what I wanted it to be able to do for me, but I didn't know exactly if a scope could do everything that I wanted. So just to give you an idea of what I was looking for, I wanted clear glass, I wanted first focal plane, so the reticle, the lines are always true. I like the 50mm lens. The Diamondback that I had was 50mm. I really enjoyed the extra light that I was able to have. I knew I wanted a zero stop, which I'll get into some of that features with the zero stop on this in just a minute. I did want a side focus. My dad's Leupold has a side focus, and it is really nice to be able to just get a little bit more clarity when you're shooting. And I wanted something that was light enough to keep my NRL Hunter build under 12 pounds. So this scope at 26 ounces fit that bill. I knew I wanted a lifetime warranty, which left me with slightly unlimited options. Athlon's warranty, as far as I can tell, is the best. As long as the product says Athlon and if there's anything wrong with it, they'll replace it. So as far as I can tell, that's definitely the best one. So let's dive into what I liked about this scope, what I didn't like about this scope, and just my general thoughts. So with this scope, it's 6x24 power, 6x24 power, however you say it. The 6 power for me is a little bit on the high side for the lower adjustment, if that makes sense. So that Diamondback that I had was 3.5. I always kept that scope at 5, and I found that wasn't an issue. But with this one being at 6 and the scope being a first focal plane scope, it actually makes the reticle, the crosshairs, on the smaller side. Now, if I want to zoom in to get that larger, then my field of view gets smaller. So that's just an issue with first focal planes in general. I don't think that's an Athlon issue. I think that's just a first focal plane problem. That's just the way it is. And this scope is more designed for out to nearly 1,000 yards, probably 1,000 yards, not 50 yards or under. So that's just something that if you're looking for something that's going to be 50 yards and other ranges, then you might want to consider a smaller objective range for your scope. So some things that I really enjoy about this scope are it seems to track really well when I adjust the height up and down. I really like that. I love the side focus. It makes just a little bit more clarity, which is nice when I'm trying to develop loads for reloading, which I just did a few weeks ago. And the scope itself just seems really nicely built. The glass, is incredibly clear, which I really, really enjoy. So something I want to mention about this scope is I got the mill reticle, and the reason I did that is talking to people. I messaged like Matt Alwine, I actually don't know him. Mills just seems like the way to go for longer range shooting, but they also offer this scope with a slightly different, line configuration in MOA, if you're more familiar with that. So overall, this scope is a scope that I really, really liked. The price point, again, I don't have much experience with higher end scopes, but the clarity of the glass, all the features on this scope, it seems like something that is really a great value, which is something I really prefer to support, is high value gear at a lower price. So that way people have more money to get out and enjoy the activities that they're buying this high quality gear for. So I want to talk about the reason why I wanted a zero stop, and this is more for the NRL Hunter side of things. With NRL Hunter, there are multiple targets and multiple ranges at each stage. Some targets could be further out, some targets could be closer, and I wanted a scope with a zero stop so I was able to utilize that zero stop and just go between targets and just quickly dialing this scope. That was what I really, really wanted, and that was something that was a must for me, which is partly what put me into this scope once I chose the Athlon brand. Now, with this zero stop, something that actually happened to me, and this is where Athlon customer service and warranty team, definitely gets a couple thumbs up for me, is I could not get this scope to 0 at 100 yards. And I was actually shooting about 44 inches high at 100 yards. So actually shooting off target, and I had to aim 8 mils low, and then I was still shooting about 9 inches high at 100 yards. Now, what the issue ended up being is that the 0 stop adjustment was limiting my up-down travel. And when I sent the scope back to them, they mentioned that the scope, I got a write-up back from Athlon. The scope actually is fine, the tracking's fine, they tracked it, putting it on the gun and then adjusting up and down and then shooting different groups. And what they found was that the 0 stop was too tight, in the sense of it was tightened down, which is what it's supposed to do. However, it was tightened down at a travel where I was not able to get the 0 at 100 yards. So for 44 inches high at 100, with my gun, that's actually close to like 1,000 yards. So I'm not sure how this exactly happened. I did get this scope used, so maybe the person before me messed with it, I'm not exactly sure. But sent the scope into Athlon, I paid shipping to them, they took care of it. That was actually just a minor thing, so they just adjusted that 0 stop. Went through all their tests, they gave me a full report on their tests, and then they shipped it back to me on their dime. So Athlon warranty, exceptional. They explained everything to me, exceptional. And just, they were really responsive with my emails, my phone calls. I'm just really happy with the customer service and just the general team at Athlon. So I would recommend this scope if you're looking for a scope for longer range shooting. Anything under 100, probably 200 yards. You could probably go with the smaller scope. This one, again, is 26 ounces, so almost 2 pounds. Pretty heavy, really big scope, and a lot of features that you may not need if you're shooting those closer distances. You probably don't need all this travel, vertical travel, if you're shooting under 300-400 yards. You just don't need that much travel. Bolts don't drop that much for most hunting rifles. But for what I'm looking for, which is to shoot out to 800, 1,000 yards if I can train myself up to it, this is the scope that works great for me. I'm really happy with it. And if you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below about your experience with this scope, or if there's another Athlon scope that I could have tried. There's a podcast coming out soon with Dustin Harding from Athlon, where we kind of dive into some of the different scope options that I could have chosen. So please leave your comments below of your experiences with Athlon products, if you like this scope, didn't like this scope, or if there's anything I can do to improve these gear review videos. And just appreciate you all for watching. Thanks, and we'll catch you on the next one.